Hello everyone, welcome to in Dallas. My name is Dr. Darling. I'm going to be moderating this panel. I'm going to open it up after a few questions and just kind of break it into comics, but we don't have to stay confined to that. There's always something you'd like to ask outside of our own little bit, break it into comics. And feel free, it's super casual, so I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves and then we'll get to some questions.
I'm Mitch Gerards. I work for, well, I don't work for DC Comics, but I do work at DC Comics. I'm currently doing Batman Brave and the Bold, Mr. Miracle, Strange Adventures, other Batman craziness.
Hi everyone, my name is Quah. I am working with Marvel and DC at the moment. Currently drawing Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and a couple of projects that will be announced by DC very soon.
Hi, my name is Goodhart. I have a couple of DC YA graphic novels out right now, and The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos, created by James Tynion, written by Tate Bromble, comes out later this month. Yeah. Thanks, man.
So I know this is more like a breaking into comics, but you are more veteran. I think even at this point we can kind of call you a veteran at this point. Like this is like at least my third or fourth panel with you, so I feel like
yeah, exactly.
I don't think you're breaking into it as much anymore. But was there a particular point in your life where you saw like a piece of art, or you saw, or you read something that you were just like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to spend the rest of my life doing.
Yeah. I have two older brothers that are 13 and 14 years older, and they were comic nerds. And so I literally have been from age 0 till 41 now, surrounded by comics. So, but I remember my brother Greg having, Legends of the Dark Knight when it came out, and Nexus by Steve Root and Mike Barron, and he was like, "Oh, you can't. These aren't for you. You're not there." Before I could read. So when he would leave the house, I'd sneak into his class, and it was so cool. That's where I fell in love with Batman, was from that.
I started drawing comics at a young age while I was in school, but that was mainly for comic books in Malaysia. And then after that, couldn't make a lot of money out of that, and I decided to went into advertising. And about 15 years ago, I decided that I wanted to try doing comics again, but I don't know where to start. And I started putting up my work on the internet and see what happens, right? And so I saw this blog by Jim Lee on his Gelato Netty blog back then when he was still in the Image. And when he just completed drawing his Batman Hush series, and he offered this little competition up to the public to see who can ink his work. And that was then when I tried painting his work, and I got mentioned by Jim Lee that I should give comics a try. So that sort of spurred me to do this, and here I am today.
For me, the big comic that was, and I said this in the last panel, so I'm sorry to you, and I'm sorry to you for hearing this again. But for me, it was Ultimate Spider-Man. That was very important for me. But growing up, it was like Batman the Animated Series. I had the trading cards, the 97 Fleer Ultra, the whole set, and I was obsessed with that. Spider-Man Torment by Todd McFarlane, that was a big one. And then it's funny that you were saying you got a shout from Jim Lee, because Mark Silvestri had his comic book competition, Who Could Draw Artifacts. I entered that. That's kind of how I got in. So we both got in with Image Founders having contests. They love their contests at Image.
This is just something that's more topical, that's more present right now, and it has to do with like AI art. And I know that there's a big difference in the way people see things. I personally go with original hand-drawn art. I think that's amazing. I think that's where the emotion is. But I know there are people, there's anyone who's trying to break into comics, who's trying to write comics or do art for comics.
So obviously this is something that's coming up in the world where you're going to have to deal with, artificial art. Is there something that you could give advice to any of these people out here? What is the best way, I guess, to combat that?
Yeah,
This is a hot topic.
hot topic.
button issue.
Hot button.
Yeah.
Me personally, not a fan. Like from a much larger standpoint than just comics or just breaking, etc. To me, art is expression from humans, and that's it. Like, that's the line. That's what art is to me. So I think when you're telling a computer that has just taken other human work and compiled into databases to figure out what you want, it's taking the art out of AI art. So I don't even like saying, AI art, it's just AI. But yeah, we're about to be in a new weird world where that's a whole terrible thing. I just saw the new Photoshop beta thing. You can just type in like gloves and it'll put gloves on someone. It's like, oh, can't deal with that. It's all just about that human expression to me, and maybe I'm just old fuddy duddy, but yeah, it just feels so skeevy to me. I can't abide.
But we get to see the rest of the Mona Lisa now.
Do you have any advice on how people can combat this new technology?
I mean, that's the hard part, is that I don't think it can be combated. Just aside from being able to spot it and not indulging in it, but I think it's one of those things where we've let the genie out of the bottle. We kind of have to deal with it now.
Yeah, I guess I echo what Mitch said. It's sort of like the Wild Wild West right now. You don't know where it's really heading, right? But at the moment, it's scary that there's this program where you can just type a few keywords and you get an image. While people like us here, if you want to do a cover, we probably slave over it for days or if not weeks, right, just to get a perfect cover. And you have this program that can just get something out there in 5 minutes. So I don't know how to relate to this. But based on what I see right now, I'm trying to learn from it, like studying what is out there right now, and I realized that hey, I just learned how to draw hairs, the digital way. I mean apart from how I know how to draw hairs. So hopefully it will evolve to something where the program can be trained to draw like myself. Maybe one day, right? Or maybe it can help to draw my art without making any changes whatsoever, right? Sort of like a collaboration. But right now, I don't think I'm a fan yet.
Yeah, I mean, in AI art, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about it. Not because I'm going to utilize it. I don't know if I will. Probably not, just because I can't even make the time to learn Clip Studio Paint. Like, I'm not going to learn a new program. But I do think that of course it's happening. There are a lot of people making fun of the fact that AI art can't replicate hands. But, guess what? 3 months later, now every AI whatever is doing hands perfectly. It's happening, it's coming faster than we think. So, but I think the cool thing about comic books, and the reason why we all love comic books here, is because you get to come in these conventions and you get to meet these artists and you get to say, hey, what was going through your mind when you were creating this page? And you get that story and you get that personal connection. Comic book styles, I think now the industry has just the most variety of styles that you've seen, and some of the most mainstream books look different than anything that you've ever seen. I mean, I remember thinking that when I read Mr. Miracle for the first time, and there was a time where Batman, every artist on Batman looked the same. That's not the case anymore. You're getting these voices and you're getting this these different brands on these titles, right? And I think that that's the real, that's where the juice is, right? So if you're breaking into comics now, I think that's great, you know, but I think that you might benefit from putting more thought into what separates you from everything else. What is that personal voice? So yes, there's a lot of fear surrounding this incoming wave of AI art, right? But I'm very influenced by, like, I love J.H. Williams III. I love his art, and I love Frank Whiteley. I cannot imagine any computer, maybe I'm gonna eat my words next year, but I can't imagine a computer being able to replicate the way those men think. You know, there's, like, maybe their art style, yeah, of course, but not the way they lay out a page, not the way they tell a story, because their minds are just vibrating on a different frequency, right? So as a storyteller, you can bring a lot of that personal vision in that I can't imagine being replicated, certainly not anytime soon.
What would you say is some of the things that you've noticed from when you first started in comics to how it is now, as far as the evolution of the whole process of it being published, and then also how conventions have changed?
Oh boy. Somebody else start now.
So can you say that again?
Some of the stuff that you noticed has changed since when you first started in comics to how it is now. Like, what's kind of similar and what's different, and maybe the pros and the cons of that.
I think currently the modern quality of art is way superior than perhaps the Bronze Age. Because I remember when I started out as a young artist back in my home, the standard is really not that high. You know, if you can just draw a decent human figure, I think chances are you might be able to break in, right, into your local publishers. And I think right now people are even more amazing. I mean, in terms of their technical skills, mainly because the quality of education has really been improved a lot. I mean, like back in Malaysia, there are colleges that can equip a student with knowledge of how to draw, composition or coloring, everything. And by the time they graduate, they are actually decent artists. They are ready to, face the digital, the comic world, doing either comics or games or whatever. So I think the standard is way higher right now in comparison.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I always joke with people, right? Because right now, Batman Brave and the Bold is it's based off the original 8-page story from 1940 of Joker's first appearance from Batman #1, and we're doing it in 96 pages. But I always joke because I look at that, the art, the Bob Kane art from Batman #1, and you're like, oh, it's very simple. It's all kind of mid-level shots, very cool for us in a nostalgic way. They had the same deadlines back then that we have now, and the standards at which you have to compete is a bad word because I don't feel like we're competing, but the standards that the bigger publishers require of you are astronomically more than they used to be. But back then, you look at those books, or 30 years after that, even not a lot of backgrounds, a lot of solid colors, and now you really can't get away with that right now. And then I think the second part of your question was conventions. I think movies have changed conventions a ton, and not just in people always gripe about San Diego being more about. I don't buy into that. It's just brought more people to conventions, and when you bring more people to conventions, people find ways to monetize conventions more, and so it's the business of conventions has gotten so much bigger. I remember going to San Diego every year as a kid, and you could spin around in a circle and lay on the ground and read your comics in the middle of the show floor. It wouldn't be a big deal at all. Now you get trampled in 0.2 seconds. But yeah, I mean, just like anything, just AI or all that stuff, like, the world is moving, and to try and stop it is a terrible idea. You kind of just gotta keep moving with the times and finding the things you enjoy and that you love and bringing that to yourself and your world rather than trying to stop the flow of time.
So when I started trying to break in, I graduated college and art school in 2010. And YouTube was around and it was very popular, but it wasn't like how it is now, where you can ask any question. You can type in how to boil an egg and you'll see like a ton of videos on YouTube on how to do that. Like just everything has an answer. So you can go and you can type in, how do I break into comics? And it'll give you like, there are dozens of art tutorials and these are the materials you need. This is the paper. None of us knew any of that stuff like a decade ago. It was just so much harder to find out. So I remember like I like asked around convention to convention and I like surveyed other comic book creators and the most common answers is what I did. So I had 6 sample pages, and I made Xerox copies and I stapled them together, my information, my contact information on every one of the pages that I hand wrote like 40 times before every convention. And I had those packets that would drop off at Zenescope Comics and IDW and whoever was around back then, Dynamite, whatever, Top Cow. And I would hand them to editors. I'd be like looking for editors. Are you an editor? Can I give you can I have a portfolio of you? Will you please look at my work? And that was 2010, 2011, 2013. And nowadays, Kickstarter is huge. And if Kickstarter was around back then, I would have had a book on Kickstarter. I would have, or whatever the big crowdfunding sites are. You know, you can, the barrier to entry is the lowest that it's ever been, but y'all were touching on this earlier. The competition is now bigger than ever before because of the internet. So the pool is now worldwide, whereas before it was whoever was in your immediate area. And before my time, I think that, you know, you had to like kind of live in New York where DC and Marvel was, and everyone was working, they called it the bullpen, so it was all I like wish I could have been around in those days, and just like working in a studio or in extreme studios, you know?
You fast forward a few more years and like, you would finish a page and you'd have to run to FedEx and ship it off to your anchor, and they would FedEx it there, and so there's constantly running, like all these stories I had from older pros about running to FedEx and
it's like oh, I must have gotten lost in the mail.
Yeah, or like an entire book gets lost and they're like,
or finish the last panel before the FedEx guy
yeah,
comes.
exactly, yeah.
You know, there's like a really legendary story of Neil Adams losing an entire issue. You've heard this one too?
No.
Yeah, like in the mail, like FedEx just lost it or whatever. And it was just like this complete nightmare, and that used to happen. You know, like, and that would be like, what, $1 million now? You know, if someone has it, maybe.
But we have this crusty bunkers team, right? To help you re-salvage pages that are missing on the FedEx.
And as far as conventions go, I think the real turning point was when Twilight at the peak of its powers took over San Diego Comic-Con. And it was huge, and I waited on that long, by the way. And then after that, like, every movie studio realized, oh, San Diego Comic-Con is where we can show our next movie, even if it has nothing to do with comics. And that sort of like changed the business model forever, yeah?
Yeah, I remember that at San Diego, I had a panel, they're like, oh, hold on, the Desperate Housewives panel's finishing up.
Yeah.
What?
I have one more question, but if anyone has some other questions, you can stand in line. We have a microphone right there, so we can get your voice going. This one, I guess, is just my own curiosity when it comes to when you're dealing with social issues. Is it something that you collaborate together with a writer,
Or do you ever get a chance to kind of like, add your own take on some of the stuff that's coming out, whether it be with, political, I guess everything's kind of political because everything's social and we're all people and it's all tied together. But is there just a way that you approach when you're dealing with sensitive or not so sensitive social issues?
Yeah, there's a couple questions in there. Tom and I are very collaborative. He gives me a script and then, it's not beholden to the script. We talk and I'll change things often without telling him. And then he'll go in and just change dialogue. It's very collaborative. And then I think the last, I don't know if there's a book that we've done that wasn't politically charged in some way, whether it's hidden or not. I mean, Strange Adventures was our way of talking about the Mueller case, and Mr. Miracle was our way of talking about living in this world where Trump is president and the Cubs win the World Series and nothing makes sense. Everything we've done has been in that way, and it helps that Tom and I are on the same lefty wavelength. But yeah, I mean, I again, for me, art is this wide concept that I'm just not interested in drawing Spider-Man punching the guy. I want to tell something. And luckily, I found a partner in Tom where we're always aiming to be proud of our work and to actually say something. And so that's kind of always our plan going in, is to be a little politically charged, but not overtly, because that's boring as hell when it's just right in your face.
So for me, I don't do much interiors these days, but based on what I'm experiencing right now as a cover artist, I think mainly because there were a few incidents where artists put in certain negative Easter eggs in the comic book. There is this department in Marvel or even in DC they actually scrutinize your cover. In my case, because I like to draw very complex background, like if I draw a scene where there are buildings with signages or hieroglyphs. There was one time when I did a Moon Knight cover, and I have this bottle with a lot of weird carvings in there, with wordings that doesn't make sense. Marvel wrote me a letter and asked me, is there any, language, is it a Chinese language or something like that you put in there?
Yeah.
They might be sensitive. Or a scene from a city, the signages. Did you put anything, naughty in the background? Can I confirm that you did not?
So for me, my career has mostly just been, I've been very lucky to get the assignments that I've gotten, and I finished the project and we move on. I did pitch one book to DC, which I'm selling at my table. It's available now. It's called Victor and Nora, a Gotham love story, and the big pitch, the hook for that book was Nora has been, I love Mr. Freeze, he's my favorite Batman villain, but we haven't seen a lot of characterization from Nora Freeze. So the big hook was, let's tell the story from her point of view. Let's explore her character and figure out why she is this, who she is, if she is everything that Victor thinks she is, or what is the story from her point of view. So that's about as, there is some inherent social commentary with that book, and I'm very proud of it. It's my one and only thing that I've ever pitched.
We'll go ahead and start taking some questions.
Hi, so I have a quick question I have two questions if that's okay, one for kind of art and one for storytelling. So for someone looking to break into comics, for example, and wanting to build up their portfolio, would you encourage them to build their portfolio based on their original art and characters and things like that, or would you encourage them to kind of maybe design and draw and things like that, characters that are already out there so people can kind of see their style? And then my second question has to do with storytelling. So when you're coming up with different stories and things to tell, do you come up and develop stories that are kind of personal to you, more personal to you, or do you develop and work on stories that kind of you think would appeal to a larger audience?
Yeah, I'll go first. For the storytelling thing, I think the best way is to kind of find a way to bridge that gap. Like I was saying before, you never want to be like slap them in the face with whatever you want to tell, but you want to find that appeal to everybody. Because at the end of the day, it's commercial publishing. You're making a book featuring these characters that another company owns if you're working for a company. But as far as samples and art and all that, I like the way, and the cool thing about breaking into comics is every single person has a completely different story. My take on that question, and I'm sure it'll be different for all three of us, is make your own comic. Try to build, not a fan base, but build your own comic and your own thing, and get it printed or just put it on the internet or have it on your iPad or whatever. And then if your goal is to work at like Marvel, DC, IDW, etc., maybe then at that point they'll be interested in what you've done, and they can go, oh, I'd love to see what you could bring to us. Could you do samples of Spider-Man, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the best approach. I think it's always cool to have your own thing, and especially I think editors like seeing your own thing more, because then they're not worried about that it becomes like a big legal deal if like a writer pitches a Batman script to DC, like they can't look at it whatsoever. So I think it's always a cooler idea to be like, hey, here's my thing that's not risky.
I think Mitch answered very well. I'll try to contribute to that. I think when it comes to building a portfolio, what an editor will look at is how you tell a story in sequential. Whether is it that you are drawing superhero characters or your own story, I don't think that would be the most important thing that they look at. They would like to see how fluid your composition are, to tell a story visually, right? Using comic panels, right? And on top of that, probably you can add on a couple of pinups, a variety of characters that might suit that particular editor. And for the second part, I will probably respond from my visual point of view as an artist. I think to create a nice portfolio or a good portfolio page, a good comic page would probably consist of 3 camera angles that I think work really well for me personally. Is that you have a full panel to show the entire environment of that particular page, and then probably a medium shot, right, where you show half body, and then a really super close up to show the expression of the face. And if every page of your comic book has that 3 camera angles, I think it would be a really good fluid method, to impress an editor. I mean that's how I see it personally.
So I love that question because I remember trying to break into comics and being like, what is the most optimal way? Like, how am I going to hit the most check boxes that I can with this one portfolio? But it would take me a lot of years to learn that editors are all different people. So they all have their own different preferences and likes and dislikes. And Mitch hit the nail on the head earlier when he said every creator comes in with a different breaking in story. Brian K. Vaughan has this story, and I was in his panel, I'm pretty sure it was a Breaking Into Comics panel, where he was saying that comics is like this big castle with a lot of holes in it, and as soon as an artist finds a hole and runs through, the guards rush over and cover that hole so no one could ever break in the same way, right? And I'm like, oh, that's a perfect metaphor. So, I have a friend who's an editor at one of the big 2 comic book publishers, and she didn't like the recent Marvel movie just because she's burnt out on superhero stuff. So she wants to see portfolios where it's more personal, and that's her personal thing. And then there are guys that are working at, editors working at Marvel and DC, that they're like, no, I live, breathe, eat superheroes. I don't want to talk about nothing else, right? So it depends. But eventually you're gonna like keep going to these conventions, and you're gonna make friends with all these editors, and you're gonna connect over Star Wars, or you're gonna connect over gardening and bird watching, you know, and you're gonna show them your stuff. But by and large, I think that if your portfolio is good and your portfolio is strong, it doesn't really matter if it's superheroes or guys hanging out at a coffee shop. Like, good work is good work, you know? So don't get too hung up on the details. Just stick to the basics. Storytelling, the camera angles was a great piece of advice. If you're a good storyteller, you got good handle on the principles, that stuff can't be ignored.
Thank you.
I think Isaac too said something really good about it's not that one meeting with that one magic meeting with an editor. It's going back to that same editor or the same people at a show year after year, and you get to show them new things and listen to what they said the last year and apply it to what you do the next year, and they build a relationship. And for everybody, want to know the number one thing you need to do to break into comics is just be like a cool, normal person. Because at the end of the day, the editors are just looking for people they can trust to put out a product. And if you're like a super weirdo, they're just not going to want to deal with you. So just be like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a job. It's just like any other job. It's a crazy cool job, and it's, you know, the dream of probably everybody in this room. But at the end of the day, it is a job like any other that requires hustle and requires getting attacked. Requires hustle, requires networking, you know, face to face, all these things, and your work actually only gets you in most of the way. You get yourself into the other way. And then the other thing is, the sad thing to always bring up at a Breaking Into Comics panel is, I find it's 10 times harder to stay in comics than it is to break into comics. Because once you're in, it's not like you're guaranteed anything ever. It's constant hustle.
Yeah.
Just consistency.
Yeah.
All right. You guys have touched on this a little bit in some of your previous answers, but I guess for me growing up, I never saw working in comics as something realistic. I just never knew anyone who was working in those fields. Everyone around me was engineers, doctors. I knew some people who were in art, but more into animation. So if you just don't know anyone in comics, how do you go about building those connections for someone who's new to it?
I was the same way. You know, I've been around comics my whole life. It's exactly what I wanted to do. But from reading Wizard magazine, I knew how hard it was to break in. So in high school, I decided to go into graphic design because I knew that was, you know, a lucrative way to do art that wasn't so insanely tough, and I wanted to get out of the house and start my life and all these things. But yeah, it's kind of everything we've been touching on. It's conventions are a great way to do it. I mean, the internet has opened up all the ways to do it. Sometimes it's as simple as going to a company's website and they'll have contact there, and then you know, you might know someone who knows someone who knows someone. It's all about getting that one email and getting that little bit of FaceTime year after year or whatever. The cool thing to do, I always think, is when you meet an editor, whether it's in person or you get an email or anything, is ask them, like, hey, I'm an artist, I would love to show you my work sometime. Could I email it to you, blah, blah, blah. That way it gives them that kind of great power to, you know, because you never know if you hit an editor, like they're really busy that day, or they're tired, or they just don't want to do something, or maybe they're super into it and let's do it now. But you give them that little bit of power, and I think that lulls them into a false sense of security, where you can jump on them.
Yeah, I think now it's way easier. to meet people, to meet editors or the publishers. Then during my time, like 15 years ago, like for my kids from Malaysia, coming to a Comic-Con is definitely not an option for me. I don't have that kind of money to fly myself over here, right? So the next best thing that I did was put my work out there, right? Social media is the best place to do that, right? If you do a bit of investigation, you'll probably find out who is the editor for whatever comic books that you hope to draw for, right? And try to be friends with them. Try not to be too in their face, right? Just make comments on their posting so that you're on their timeline, and then keep showing up every day. Show your work, right? And then on top of that, you can also do your own stuff, right? Like there's Webtoon right now, right? I mean, a lot of platforms for you to create your own projects, right? And get yourself ready. When an editor takes notice of you, then you have a product to show them.
Yeah, and I would also add that in comics, it seems to be like that people break in and kind of come up in the industry in groups or in classes. So, and I think when I was just starting to break in, one of the biggest mistakes that I made was that I was annoying. What'd you say? Like, don't be a weirdo? I was a weirdo. And I was like, because all the people that were established, I would be at the bar like, hey, can I buy you a drink? I love your work. Let's be friends. And it was like, A, intimidating, B, I had no shame. And, it just wasn't working. They were like, I'll take the beer, but I do not want to talk to you. And that was me for years, right? And so it would take me a long time to learn. And this is where I'm at now. You cultivate the friendships that you have with people that are on your level. So if I were breaking in today, I would reach out to anyone on Kickstarter and say like, hey, can I join your anthology? I would keep an eye out for people that have open submissions for their zines or their anthologies, and I would try to be part of those groups and or what have you, and really cultivate the people that the circles with your peers, because those are the people that are going to rise up and then recommend you or want to work with you. Oh, and I wanted to add this earlier, but people, generally speaking, they don't want to work with the best creators in the industry. They want to work with their friends. You're about to embark on this project that's going to last a month, that's going to last a year, or even longer. You want to work with someone that you're going to be able to hang out with and chill with. That's really the main thing of it. So yeah, you're going to make a lot of friends that are on your level, and they're going to be your best friends as you rise up together.
Thank you.
Hi. I create a lot of content about comics, so thanks for keeping me in business. But what I wanted to ask, because this is something I've talked to a lot of creators over the past few conventions, is there a specific hurdle or an obstacle that once you got past it, you felt like you had leveled up, or like you were at the next place that you wanted to be in your career?
You want to start? I can't. I mean, I can start. So I actually, that's a great question. However, I feel like I'm going to have a very disappointing answer for you, because I've had a lot of moments where I'm like, so I'm going to be all different from here on out, and then it ended up not being the case. Whenever people talk about breaking in, and I think you guys might relate to this or understand this, but I feel like I've broken in several times. I feel like I'm still breaking in. There isn't. You said this earlier, but it's not like you have that first thing and then life is on easy street. My first thing was at Zenoscope Comics. I did a Shark Week Migration Patterns short story, which is exactly what it sounds like. And that was my first printed anything. And they were like, no one wanted to do it. And I was like, I'm ready. And I like spent hours. I still think it's some of my best work, honestly. And I like made the like school of fish. Like I had this like compositional element where the shark is swimming to Antarctica. It's gorgeous. I should show it to you. It's beautiful. No one read it because why would anyone read it? And it would be another few years before I had my next thing, right? And by the time I like broke in, it was that Mark Silvestri contest where it's like, we're opening submissions for this. The only requirement is that you can't have had anything published before. And I just was like, I've never been published. Anyway, he's here, he's sitting next to me. Don't tell him that I cheated.
I think human is just, greedy, I would say, right? Is that when you first got your first comic gig, you were very happy, even though there's an indie book, right? And then after that, you got into IDW. For in my case, right, I was happily doing indie gigs, right? It's my dream to draw comics, right? And that's it. I don't care what I draw, right? Then after that, you got into IDW, you get to draw the TMNT, right? Then you get happy, but then you're still greedy, you want to do something else, right? I hope I can draw for Marvel, right?
Yeah, you keep moving the goalposts.
The goalposts keep moving, right? And then you just want more, right? And then by the time you get to draw for Marvel and DC, right? You hope that you draw the better characters rather than So this thing is constant, and what I learned from all this is that you get paid to evolve. When you started out your career, I always look back at what I did like 10 years ago. It's like I realized that I'm getting paid to improve myself, and I'm hopeful that I'm still getting paid to improve myself, right? Which is something that I enjoy, and that I know that this year I'm drawing like this. Perhaps in the next 5 years, my work would have evolved to something else.
Yeah, I think my biggest hurdle was, you break in, awesome. I'm drawing, I did some Doctor Who early on. The biggest hurdle was, now that you've broke in, was getting a job that paid enough to live. Because that took even longer than breaking in. It's a crazy field of hurdles. And the cool thing about, you go downstairs and you see Artist Alley and all these artists, the amount of drive and hustle in every single person sitting there is crazy. Because we all spent years trying to get wherever you are, whether it's at that table or you're at DC, you're at Marvel, you're at whatever tiny publisher that's actually just your friend. The amount of work we've all put in and the hustle, and it's really cool to see that and be there for that.
I had a question. So, as far as I'm aware, it is very common in the industry. If you are an artist, you will typically get paid, or you will typically get paired with a writer. And if you're a writer, you will typically get paired with an artist. What sort of advice do you have for somebody who is an artist and a writer who wants to write a story and make a comic out of that story and have that particular comic published?
Yeah, start out making your own. Marvel, DC, IDW, Image, it's different. But all those publishers, boom, they don't want to see your pitch for their stuff. They just don't. But if you do your own thing, because you want to be a writer, artist, and control everything, do that. Do it whether it's online or you can print 20 of them at your local, whatever you can do to get that and then get the attention of the next person to move up that ladder.
We got about 5-6 minutes left, so we're gonna try to get to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. What Mitch says is, if you want to be a writer and your own art, and also you do your own art, right, or do your own thing, that is the best place to do it. And now you have Kickstarter platforms and Webtoon, in so many places for you to express yourself. And I think the simple answer is just do it yourself.
Oh, you just said everything I was gonna say. Yeah, just do it. You get a Kickstarter, make it a hit. Let Marvel and DC come to you. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
I was going to offer to buy everybody a drink, but I didn't see that here, so.
I'll take a drink.
Oh, okay.
I'll take
Then
it.
go away.
My question is, we talked about getting in front of editors and publishers and things like that. You said you can't make every show. I mean, this is a huge drive for me to be just here. So would you recommend somebody either trying to do like one big show a year or trying to find multiple smaller shows and to get more eyes instead of having to fight 1,000, 2,000 people in San Diego to get in front of somebody? Maybe find a smaller show where you're only fighting 500 people 3 times a year.
The problem with the smaller shows is the inconsistencies of who will be there year after year. The one benefit to a bigger show is most companies do like a drop-off thing where you don't have to sit there in line and wait for everything. You can kind of drop it off in the morning if they want, hey, I'd love to talk to you for 10 minutes, whatever. And I've heard from many people like getting that call is great, or that text message, but sometimes it's for them to tell you how much they don't like your work. They just in whatever mood they're in. Find that show that someone is at every year, or at least semi-consistently. But that's just shows. I mean, again, the internet has opened all this stuff. Like Twitter, you can find every editor who exists. It's a hellscape now, but that's a different panel.
I think assuming that you have planned everything perfectly, right? Portfolio, everything is perfect, right? You're ready to be an editor. I would think going for a larger show would be the best bet. I mean, in my case, my first show was New York Comic Con 15 years ago. Just to go and do that Marvel tryout. Prepare myself with a portfolio. Right, take the 24-hour flight to New York, right? And I didn't get it, but I knew that I prepared well enough, and I'm going to try again another year.
I mean, your question is a good one, and it's very. The thing is, it sounds like you're asking. We're friends, so I'm going to be a little bit harsher on this answer, but it feels like you're asking, how do I get luck and how do I benefit from that luck? Because there's so many conventions where like it's the tiniest little hole in the wall, like nobody's there, but that one editor like was really on a mission to find the next great voice. And then there are these big conventions where every editor is just exhausted and they don't want to hear from anyone new because they just got yelled at by like the biggest name artist in their company, and it's like this whole thing and it's a drama. So you just never know, but I do think that all the things that we've been talking about with Kickstarter and the internet and friends and self-publishing, all that is like very, very good advice. That's probably your best bet. But oh, and by the way, I know that we're running out of time, so if anyone has any more questions, I'm at my table for the rest of the show. I'd be very happy to talk to you more. Yeah.
Okay, so, sorry. I have ADHD, so my brain just died for a second.
It's okay, take your time.
All right, so I was told, I'm somebody who's illustrating, scripting, writing everything for my comic that I've been working on. I'm doing the whole shebang. I have concept art, cover art, and all the panels. Like literally I'm doing everything. I've looked for people to help me with backgrounds. I've looked for script writers, but everybody who can do it is probably working on their own pieces, or everybody's close to commission. So I've been left to do everything for myself. But I'm not an expert in every single area, and I was recently told like, oh, you don't do this, you need to find somebody for that. You don't do this, you need to find somebody for that. Basically, he was like, you should put your comic out. And if you are the sole person for it, do I just wait until I can finally
come across somebody who can do certain things better than me, or is it worth still putting the work out?
Sorry, I didn't get a question. Are you a writer or?
Just doing it.
Okay.
Everything.
Yeah, okay.
Is it better to wait to find someone who can do something better than you, or is it better just to put all your work out just to get it out there?
I think that I'd love to look at your work if you have it, by the way. But I think that the best thing, just in a very general sense, is to just put it out there, publish it online, and move on to the next thing, and have the second project be better, and have the third project be better than that, and eventually on a long enough timeline. Oh, and you can be open to finding collaborators throughout this entire journey, but it's only going to behoove you and benefit you to keep moving and keep improving, and not having so many hopes tied to this is the project that's going to launch my career. I thought for sure I was going to be a penciler, and I was like, I'm studying to be a penciler. I have no interest in inking. I have no interest in coloring. And now, because of how times have changed, I had to learn how to ink, I had to learn how to draw in Photoshop, and I had to learn how to color in Photoshop. I just had to learn those things for a variety of reasons, but now I'm glad that I did, because I wasn't so tied to, this is my career trajectory, I'm a penciler. That's just not feasible anymore. You know, I had to learn the other skills. I'm a better artist because of it. I'm a better penciler because I learned how to ink and learned how to color. It's just the way that it is. So kudos to you for becoming a jack of all trades, and keep moving. Yeah.
I just think it's very free to kind of know that your first thing will never be your best thing. It's more important for the long term to keep moving and making new things and listening to people, listening to feedback, and learning. Like, the craziest thing is the more you do, the more you learn from yourself. And so the next thing is better, the next thing is better, the next thing is better. Just put out stuff you're proud of. It doesn't have to be the greatest thing on earth, but put out stuff you're proud of, and eventually you get to that point where other people see it, and they're like, there it is. Like, I see your evolution, that's great, and you can tell that you love what you do here. Like, that's more powerful than finding that perfect book because you have the perfect idea.
Another round of applause for our